Okay, I think we can start and welcome everyone come here. And today our host will be our advisor, ICM advisor, Max, and we really feel grateful to invite Juan come here. So Max, you can start right now.
Sure, yeah. So, hey everyone, I think we're gonna start. So first, welcome to OSU ICM International Career Fair. So I'm the advisor of the student organization, and also I'm the previous treasurer of ICM. So ICM focuses on helping university students to achieve campus career and academic success. So every year we officially cooperate with OSU Buckeye Career Office. So we have held the International Career Fair for 3 years. This year, we also invited many guests, great guests, to participate in our career fair. So this year is a little bit different because of the COVID. So it's a little bit different compared to the in-person career fair, but I think currently with Zoom, so we're totally fine. And today, so our president and I will be the host. So Juan, do you mind to unmute yourself and make an introduction?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. I'm the president. Currently, I'm the president of the International Career Management, and we are focusing on help the OSU, especially the international student, to achieve the success and academic success. So that is the meaning in what we do. So today we also invite the Juan come here to give us some presentation and to tell us how to network and how to get the intern offer like that. So yeah, that is all for my introduction. Thank you.
Sure. So before we introduce Juan, so I'm gonna first introduce the agenda. So if you have any questions, just feel free to type your questions inside the chat box, and also feel free to unmute yourself and directly talk to Juan. And so we'll have the first section, which is the presentation section. So our guest speaker will have like 20 minutes to 40 minutes to have a speech and introduce his stories. And then we have 10 minutes for Q&A session. So we would like to have you guys ask any questions, and we'd like to see in the chat box. So after the first section, so we'll have the second section that we have one-on-one chat with our guest speaker. So we'll set a breakup room. And then I think all the students here who want to attend the second session have registered ahead of time by filling out registration forms. So we also have sent a serial number and a confirmation letter to all the students. So we remind each of the students 10 minutes in advance, so no worries about the time. And if you are not sure about which time you're gonna talk with Juan, so just ask us, and that will be super easy for us to check for you. And then most importantly, so today I'm very honored to invite my friend, also my mentor, Juan. So he graduated last year, and he is currently working for Deloitte. So we're in the same business fraternity, Delta Sigma Pi. So when he was on campus, he helped me a lot and also mentored me a lot. And so I know Juan is super busy as a strategy consultant in Deloitte. So, but today he would like to spend those time with us. So I really appreciate his time, and I think we will give the time to Juan. And Juan, just let me know if you're ready. So just feel free to start anytime.
Perfect. Well, thank you both so much. I am so excited to be here. I'm excited to share some of my stories and hopefully help all students find a little bit more confidence in getting an internship and getting that job. So thank you, Estelle, and thank you, Max, for having me. And well, let me start off by saying first, welcome to everybody. Thank you for having me. I know this semester at Ohio State, it has been very different because of COVID. So I am proud of all of you for making it through this far, and I hope you continue doing great work in your classes, especially if you're here in Columbus at Ohio State, or if you're back at home. If you woke up very early to watch this, thank you, and I'm sorry you woke up early. I will make it worth it so that this is a worthwhile time for all of us. I'll share some of my stories with my internships and some of the skills and tips that I have for you to get an internship and for you to feel confident in interviews as well. So hopefully this is beneficial. If at any point you have any questions, please write them in the chat box, or we can answer them, of course, at the Q&A at the end. But before we get started, before I introduce myself, I want to get to know you guys as well, whoever's here with me today. You don't have to turn on your screen if you don't want to, that's okay. But if you can, if you want, please in the chat, let me know what you're studying at Ohio State. Let me know where you're from. And if you want, maybe your favorite international food or something. anything at all, just if you want to introduce yourself. But I'll keep an eye on that tab just in case to say hi as well. Well, so before I get started with some of my tips, I want to kind of give a quick introduction into who I am so you get to understand the internships that I've done and the work that I've done. I am going to share my screen right now. So once I do, Max, let me know if you can see it. I'm sharing now. All right.
Sure, we can see it.
You see it? Perfect. I'll go into presentation mode. Perfect. All right. So you can see that, Max? All good? All right, perfect. So let me get into my story and I'll explain all the details within that. So first off, my name is Juan Tremonton. I know it's a very weird name, but it's a Spanish name, and I'll explain why. It's because I was born in Venezuela, in South America. So my first language is Spanish. I moved to the US later in life, and English became my second language. I have one older brother who you can see here graduating 2 years ago. He actually lived in Beijing for 1 year, and he lived in Hong Kong for 1 year. So he knows Mandarin and some Cantonese as well. He is very fascinating, but I unfortunately have not learned as much as he has. And then in the US, I moved to a small city in Ohio called Cincinnati, or near Cincinnati, called Mason. Cincinnati is about an hour away from Ohio State down south. And that led me to study at Ohio State University. And I chose Ohio State University because of a program called Integrated Business Engineering, which allowed me to study a business major and an engineering minor, which was awesome so that I could learn both worlds between business and engineering. On the business side, I switched my major like 4 times. I ended up with logistics management, which I loved. And then on the engineering side, I studied mostly computer software. And then I had an Italian minor as well. Let's see if there's any chats I'll respond to. Thank you for the nice chats. I appreciate it. Okay, so continuing on with my story, at Ohio State, the one thing that I really wanted to do was get involved with a lot of organizations. And so I found a lot of great places, one being Delta Sigma Pi, which I was with Max. Max is a fantastic student in that organization, so that's where I got to meet him. I was also in OUAB, which planned all of the concerts and big events, Buckeye Leadership Fellows, and many other organizations. I'll talk about why these involvements are important a little bit later on in the presentation. My first internship was between my sophomore and my junior year at Ohio State, and I did that internship at Procter & Gamble. It's a global company based in Cincinnati, Ohio, and I did a supply chain job. It's called Supply Network Operations, but very supply chain logistics oriented there that summer. I'll explain all about that in a second once I get there. Next up, I studied abroad for 1 full semester at the University of Bocconi in Milan, Italy. And that experience taught me what it's like to be an international student. So I think I might share a lot of the struggles and benefits of being an international student. Like many of you, being in Italy without knowing how to speak Italian, it was very isolated. I felt isolated. I felt lonely at times. I didn't know anybody, and I didn't know how to meet new people or make friends. It was a very difficult time for me, but it was also the best experience of my life when I got to really enjoy meeting people and getting involved. So I'm sure we share some of those similar feelings. After that, my junior year, I had an internship at Goldman Sachs in New York City. This was a phenomenal internship for me. It was very difficult, and I'll tell you some of my learning lessons throughout the presentation. Finally, I came back as a senior at Ohio State, where I was a peer advisor at Fisher. So I taught the survey classes at the beginning of the year that no one likes to take, but I was one of those peer advisors. And also represented Ohio State on the homecoming court, which was just a very nice way for me to feel like I represented Ohio State in a sense. After graduation, my plan was to start working at Deloitte Consulting in August, but because of COVID, they pushed that job until January. So I'm waiting to start in January with strategy consulting in New York City. In the meantime, I am working at a startup called Designed Engagement. And the startup focuses on helping students fulfill their education if they don't have the resources during COVID. So for those students that are from kindergarten to 12th grade in high school that don't have Wi-Fi or laptops or the same resources, we try to help them maintain their education. So that's a little bit about my story. Now, I want to explain why all this matters. At first, you may be sitting there looking at this like I am, saying like, how did this even happen? How did this path look so simple and so direct? When in reality, it's not. This path was filled with so many more failures and mistakes and other bad things along the way. But of course, a lot of great things and learning lessons that I also was able to see. And so that's what I want to explain today. I want to explain how to navigate your path, but most of all, how to build your own path. Not to follow mine or to follow anybody else's, but to build your path, the one that you want for your life. So I'll explain this in 3 lessons that I've learned throughout college. The first being, let me see if my slide changes. There it is. This quote from Jim Rohn, which is, if you really want to do something, you'll find a way. If you don't want to do something, you'll find an excuse. And so this quote really applies to my first internship that was at Procter & Gamble. Let me tell you a quick story. When I was a first-year student at Ohio State in 2016, 4 years ago, I went to the career fair, and it was awful. Who's been to a career fair where you're just so overwhelmed and stressed out? That was me. I didn't know who to talk to or what companies. I felt very stressed out. And on the way home, I was going back to my dorm. I passed by a building at Ohio State. I forget the name. Maybe it was Campbell. It was across from Dries Laboratory, if you're familiar. And there was a sign outside that said, Procter & Gamble resume drop. Now, I had no idea what a resume drop was. I didn't even know what to do. But I said, you know what? I'm going to go. I know I've always wanted to work at Procter & Gamble, so I'm just going to stop by and see what happens. I walked inside, and there was a line of 50 people, all juniors and seniors, waiting to walk into this room. And I was too embarrassed to turn around and leave, so I just walked to the back of the line, and I just stood there with my resumes in hand. I waited 45 minutes, and I got to the front of the line, and the woman at the front asked me, what department do you want to apply for? And I was like, department? I have no idea. And so I looked on the room real fast, and I saw a sign that said SNO. And I was like, that one. And she was like, okay, go ahead. So I walked into the room, sat down, and I had this conversation with a man from Procter named Josh. And Josh immediately saw my resume, and he said, oh, you're a freshman? So sorry, we're not taking freshmen. But tell me a little bit about yourself. So I talked to Josh for maybe 10 minutes, and then I left. He told me to check the application online anyway, just to see if I could maybe just do it anyway. And I went, and I tried to take the P&G test, if you've ever heard of it, and I failed it. I failed it my first year. It was so bad. So fast forward to my sophomore year, it's career fair season again, and I'm trying to look for an internship. And I felt so frustrated at the career fair until I'm walking home, and I get a message on LinkedIn from Josh, the guy that I spoke to the year before. And Josh said, hey, I hope you come back to the resume drop. We're doing it again this year. And so I was like, okay, well, if Josh was willing to reach out to me, I should pass by again. Although I didn't want to because they denied me the first time and I was so bad. I was like, I don't want to go back and fail one more time. But like this quote says, if you really want to do something, you'll find a way. If not, you'll find an excuse. So I told myself, I'm going to go back, and no matter what, I don't care if I failed already. So I show up, I have another conversation with someone new, and they're like, wow, you seem a lot more prepared for this. And I was like, yes, I've had a year worth of time to feel more confident. And so then I did the test again. I studied a little bit, I took it in a much more comfortable location, and I passed the test. And I got to the interview, and I passed the interview, and I got the internship at Procter & Gamble, which was very tough. But I want the lesson to be taught is say yes to everything, because if you really want something, you'll find a way to make it work. If you don't really want it, you'll find an excuse like, oh, I failed last time, or I don't know enough about the company. There's always infinite excuses. But if you really want that internship, continue pushing forward, because if you show that you want it and that you're confident, things will start rolling in your direction. Now, I'll give a little bit of information about my internship at Procter & Gamble. What's great is that Procter & Gamble is an international company with jobs all over the world. My friend at OSU, her name is Mei Huang. She is also from Beijing, or maybe she's from Shanghai, I forget. She did an internship with Procter & Gamble in Beijing last summer, which she ended up loving. And so she had an opportunity where she didn't need the visa for the work in the summer because she was able to go back home. I did my internship in Cincinnati and loved it. It was with supply chain, similar to logistics. very interesting and complex, especially at a global company that works with international supply chains. What was super beneficial was that by speaking another language, whether mine is Spanish, some may be Chinese or Cantonese or whatever it is, it helps you meet and network with a lot of people in the company that probably share that same language with you. So I always tell my friends, if you can find an internship with an international company, do it, because they are much more willing to sponsor students, help students, and you can connect with a lot of people. So that was my first internship at Procter & Gamble. And the benefit of having an internship as a sophomore is that it started to get the ball rolling, and it really helped me my next year. Now, my next internship, as I mentioned, was with Goldman Sachs in finance. Completely different, the opposite type of internship, which takes me to my next lesson that my mom taught me, which was jump and then the net will appear. So there's, my mom told me, but I'm sure she copied that from somebody else. It's not her quote, so don't trust her. But what this quote means is take the risk first, and then secondly, you'll find the rewards. You can't wait in life for everything to reach you in order to take that opportunity. Take the risk and move forward with it, because you will see that 9 out of 10 times you will be rewarded with a great learning lesson. So how does this apply to my internship? I come back from my Procter & Gamble internship as a junior, and I ask myself, if next summer I do the same internship again, I'm going to get better at that internship, but I'm not going to learn anything new. Or for the most part, I won't learn a lot of new things. I'll learn a little bit of new things. So I told myself I want to pivot completely and try something completely new. And for me, I had never studied finance before, but I had a lot of friends in finance. So I said, maybe an internship could be a good chance to learn something about finance. And without even knowing anything, I just applied to a bunch of banks. And this is where you take that risk. This is where I took my risk. Who knew? I didn't think I was going to get an internship. I didn't know I was going to even get an interview. But I applied anyway, because the worst thing that could happen is that they say no, and then that's it. I'll move on to the next one. That's okay. We all get no's in some location or another. So thankfully, my Goldman Sachs, they gave me an interview position. And so I went and I interviewed, and I told them all up front, I don't know much about finance, but I'm a quick learner, and I am very excited about this internship. I hope you give me a chance. And they were willing to take a risk on me, like I was willing to take a risk on the internship, and they gave me a spot. So I moved to New York City, and I'll tell everyone a secret. 1, I loved New York City more than anything in the world. And 2, I liked my internship at Goldman Sachs. So that's usually the flip side. Usually people love their job, and second, the city. But for me, it was all about the city that I was in. So in my internship, I worked in finance management. The team was called liquidity management. It's a lot of terms, but it's all about moving cash very fast between different accounts. It was very exciting and difficult. I had to learn a lot to catch up. If anyone here is in finance, you'll find this story funny. If not, that's okay. On my second day at Goldman Sachs, I asked my team what a hedge fund was, and they all laughed at me because they were like, you should have known that coming in. But I was like, I don't know, I've never taken finance. So that's the story of my Goldman Sachs internship, where I was able to take a lot of skills in communication, a lot of skills in finance and number crunching, data analysis, Excel, a lot of those skills. So then I come back as a senior to Ohio State, and I ask myself one more time, what do I want my full-time job to be? And here's where I felt very confused, because there's so many companies and so many potential jobs. Where do you choose? Where do you even start? And one of my friends told me a quote that they had learned, which was, happiness does not come from being successful. Success depends on your happiness. Which for me, it took me a second to realize that usually in my life, the happier that I was, if I was getting more sleep, eating better, feeling better, more excited, I felt more successful. Whereas every time I reached an accomplishment, I always was like, okay, good, but what's next? I never felt happy when I was reaching like successful markers, It's a very contrasting point. And so I asked myself, in the past 2 years, what has really made me the happiest? And for me, it had been living in Milan when I did my internship and living in New York City. And so I did something kind of crazy, and I don't say that this is the best advice, but I ended up choosing my full-time job because of New York City rather than the job itself. So I'll explain what that means. I put a filter in my head where every job I applied for had to have an office in New York City. Now, that is a very tough thing to say, so don't follow that advice blindly. If you have a city that you love, then definitely, but if not, don't worry about this. And so I started looking for a lot of companies that would combine my finance skill with my supply chain skills and be in New York City. And I found that a lot of those jobs were consulting jobs. Now, as you may have heard of consulting, consulting is a field where you solve problems for other companies or groups. They'll come to us and say, I need help buying another small company that's a startup. And our team, our job is to find a way to make that happen. Or what strategy do they need to make that happen, right? And so for me, it was really exciting because I love solving problems. As an engineer, I've done some coding classes, not too many. I took Java and C++. A lot of that is problem solving. It's figuring out, okay, where are my errors and how can I fix them? And what's the best way to solve a program? And so I figured that consulting could be a really good path to start my career. And I ended up choosing Deloitte Consulting, specifically because Deloitte Consulting is relatively new in the world of consulting. If you've heard of consulting, you've probably heard of McKinsey, Bain, BCG. These are big consulting names. However, Deloitte is more new. They just started a consulting in 2013, I think, 7 years ago. And so I felt that it felt a little bit more fresh and more exciting. And that's something that I wanted to do in New York City. So that's why I chose Deloitte. As you can see, my path to my internships was never clearly defined. I never had this path where I said, I know I want to get to Deloitte, so I need to do these 2 internships to get there. The big learning lesson is that each decision that I made was a snowball effect that led into the next internship. So what I want to really give you as a piece of advice is don't feel overwhelmed thinking that you need to have your life planned out for the next 3-4 years, that you need to know every decision you're going to make, because no one knows. There are no instructions in life. I didn't know. I'm sure 90% of people don't know. If you do know, that's awesome because that's great. But if you don't stress out. What you should worry about is what is that first decision you want to make, and always root that decision in what's going to make you happy and also what skills you want to learn. That internship will lead to another one, or it'll lead you to meeting someone new or an involvement on campus. Each thing will lead to one another that eventually rolls into this path that you've seen in my life. So that's kind of the story of my internships. But now I want to give you all some tips that I have for conversations, networking, interview, and hopefully it'll help you feel more confident when you're going down your own path. So I'll start with this. I hate the word networking. And the reason I don't like this word is because what does it even mean? It's so confusing and we use it too many times. Now, I see the value in networking. I think it's still powerful. But instead of networking, I always tell myself, I'm just having a conversation to get to know somebody. The same way that Estelle and I, or Max and I were talking at the beginning, you're just having a conversation. That's all it takes. But to help you out, here are some tips on networking. So this is my Networking 101 class. Starting out, here's one tip that I use in every conversation, no matter what. At a career fair, meeting someone new, everything. I start every conversation by saying, how is your day going so far? Here's why I ask that. This question will always help you understand how the conversation is going to go. So say I'm talking with Max and I say, hey Max, how is your day going so far? And Max responds with something like, Juan, it's going well. I'm a little tired. That way I know with my conversation with Max to, calm down and take it slow, not to be super energetic like I usually am, and match his energy. This is really powerful when you're meeting with recruiters at career fairs, maybe especially on Zoom. If you ever have a conversation with someone on Zoom and you go like this, hi Max, how's your day going so far? And Max says, Juan, it is going great. I'm so excited. I'm so happy to be here. Now I know that Max is just as excited as I am. I can match his energy level and we can both have this great conversation. So I always start with that. Next, in my mind, I always have 3 questions to ask to really learn about someone in an interesting manner. These aren't the same 3 questions that you have to ask. You can change them, but I'll just tell you my 3. My 3 are, if you could give a TED Talk about anything, what would it be? What makes you unique? And 3, if you could direct a movie, what would it be about? Here's why I ask these questions. Again, you can make your own, but these are mine. I love TED Talks. I watch TED Talks all the time. I listen to the podcast and everything. And I've always thought that one day I want to give a TED Talk. So I always ask people for ideas, and I ask them, hey, if you could give a TED Talk, what would it be about? That's why I like that. 2, what makes you unique? I think this is sometimes weird to ask in a regular conversation, so I don't try to just say like, hey, what makes you unique? But instead I'm like, wow, you're very interesting. You seem like a very unique person. Is there anything about you that's really like special to you? And that way you get to learn maybe something deeper about somebody. For example, if somebody asked that question to my brother, he would tell them that he lived in Beijing for a year and Hong Kong for a year. And that really opens up conversation. And lastly, I'm a huge movie fan. I love movies. So when I was younger, I wanted to be a director. So I always ask people, if you could direct a movie, what would it be about? My favorite movie is Parasite. If anyone has seen it, I love that movie so much. Okay, so think to yourself 3 questions that you always have in your head to ask people that are very unique questions. And then lastly, I always recommend to tell stories about yourself or tell stories that relate between you and the other person. There's a leadership scientist at Ohio State named Tim Judge, and he always says that our brains are not hardwired to understand logic or retain facts. 63% of people will remember a story that you tell. Only about 5 will remember that exact statistic. So what this means is, if you're at a career fair and you tell a recruiter, last year in my internship, I spent 85% of my time working on an account of $250,000 in order to create 6 numbers of 4 products. They're going to forget that as soon as you walk away. But if you tell a recruiter, last internship, I had the best day of my life when I finally, after working so hard on a project, found the solution that no one had found before. And it was so exciting because I had worked so hard for it, and it meant a lot for me. My managers loved it. They shared it with their team, and it showed me that I just have to be confident in myself, blah, blah, whatever it is. That recruiter is going to remember your excitement and your story much more than that skill or that statistic that you told them from your resume. So those are some 3 networking conversation tactics. Now, get your cameras out ready for this one, or screenshot. Don't be overwhelmed, but here are 35 questions you can ask in a conversation for networking if they're beneficial. Here they are. These are the 35 questions that I use in my conversations. I'll leave them up if you want to take a picture or a screenshot, and I'll share the presentation too at the end as well. But I want to make sure, let me hide the chat. Sorry, let me go backwards. So these are some questions that I will have with me on a piece of paper, especially during Zoom where they can't see your desk. You can put them in front of you on your desk and ask these questions to anybody. So if you have your one-on-one Zoom with me later, here are some questions that you may want to ask. Okay, so I'll share this later in case. Next, I posted this on my LinkedIn, and these are career fair quick tips and interview tips. If you want to find the link, here is the link to that post. Using your camera, or if you want a screenshot, you can use this to get to the link that I posted this article. It's the exact same article, so there's no new information, but this is just a quick way to get there if you want. Just as a quick summary, when it comes to career fairs, I know that in the future you may be on Zoom. If you are on Zoom, one big tip that I'll give you is find any way you can to make it feel less like you're staring at each other on a screen and more like you're just talking to each other in a conversation. Whether that's using your arm movements like I do a little bit. I know that's a little intimidating for some people. I know it's me being a person from Latin America. I use my hands a lot. But it's mostly just engaging with your body posture too. When you're speaking to someone, showing them that you respect them as they will respect you. When it comes to interviews as well, this is another tip. Who gets nervous when you're in interviews? I do all the time. I talk fast, as you might have seen already. When I'm in interviews, I always remind myself, I'm just having a conversation with someone who wants to get to know me. When I do that, I feel much more comfortable and relaxed. I try to tell more stories, like I mentioned, and try to relate to the interviewer rather than trying to convince them about why I'm a good candidate. Instead, I just try to win them over on my team. Because later on, when that interviewer is looking at 4 candidates, they're going to remember the person who they felt like they built a connection with, rather than the one that had the 4.0 GPA with the best internships. So always feel confident in that. I also listed some places where you can learn about where business is going on, quick places to read and podcasts to listen to. And then if communication is something that makes you nervous, there's an app called Orai, O-R-A-I, down there. You'll see it on the post. It helps you enhance your communication level. So I think that's a great app. And then finally, when it comes to career fairs and interviews, I know a lot of us may feel very stressed out and overwhelmed. So I always recommend friends to download this app called Headspace that gives you time to just be mindful and be a little bit more relaxed throughout your day, which is very beneficial. So those are some of the skills and tips about networking and interviewing. This final slide are my final tips for you in terms of having what you feel like is building your own path, right? The first is that I always recommend to my friends and students to find champions in your life. Now, champions is just another word for mentors, but I think sometimes we fear to look for mentors because it's kind of difficult. How do you ask somebody to mentor you? Instead, I think to myself, how can I find champions in my life? People who are in my corner in the boxing ring, cheering for me and supporting me no matter what. Here are two that you may want to look out for at OSU. One, try to find an older student, whether that's a sophomore, a junior, or a senior, whether they are in a club like ICM or whether they are in an organization that you're in, someone who's been through those classes and those internships who can help you learn more. I know Max, one of his champions is one of my friends, Lauren, who is a fantastic person who's now working in Belgium. So Max found a champion older than him. The other thing is I always recommend students to find a champion who's a professor. This is difficult to do, so I understand that this is not as easy, but if you can find a class that you love and you meet with that professor after class, they will start to become a champion in your life where they want to see you succeed in their class, get a better grade in their class, and 3, they can help you connect with other jobs and internships. So always feel free to go to their office hours. Start with that first question, like I said, how is your day going? And then you can ask some of those 35 questions to get to know your professor. My second tip is to get involved. Challenge yourself to join a new organization on campus. If you're a first-year student at OSU, I know this is going to be difficult because of virtual, but I really challenge you to try to step out of your comfort zone and find a new place or a new organization, or even a fun one. You don't have to join the best organization on campus. Join one that is fun for you. My friend joined the Super Smash Club, and so he had a lot of fun there. So you can join whatever you want. The other thing I tell everybody is that if internships are very difficult, as an international student, I know that there's a lot of troubles with getting visas to work in the United States. If you find yourself in this situation, remember that involvements like ICM or other things on campus, I call them free mini internships. Because if you work within this involvement, just like Estelle is doing and Max are doing, you get to learn skills very similar to those that you would get in an internship. Communication skills, problem-solving skills, leadership, organization, a lot of things that are similar to what you do in an internship. So if you can't find an internship, get in an involvement somewhere on campus. Lastly, focus on your priorities. I once asked one of my friends, I can't believe that people so successful like Apple and Google and those companies, how do they get everything done in a day? And my friend told me, never forget that every single person, Albert Einstein, you and me, everybody has 24 hours in a day. No one has more time or less time. So prioritizing your time is very important. I use Google Calendar and this app called Trello to organize my life and make sure that I'm always knowing what I want to get done in a day. My tip for organization is I never let myself build a checklist of more than 5 items in a day. I just pick what are the 3 to 5 most important things to do today, and I get them done. And then lastly, always take time to focus on yourself and your hobbies. My hobbies during quarantine and COVID have been learning a new language, so I'm trying to learn French. I've been learning how to play piano. My roommate and I are trying to buy ourselves a piano to learn more, and playing tennis. So these are some of the hobbies that help me just stay who I am and get excited for my day whenever I can. So with that being said, that is my presentation. I will definitely share that with you all so you can have it. And Estelle, Max, if you want, we can move to the question and answer portion as well.
Sure, yeah. Thank you so much for your presentation. I mean, like, you're also one of my big champion in the campus, yeah. So, okay, cool. So if you guys have any questions, just feel free to ask this question in the chat. I feel like multiple questions previously, but if you guys want to ask any questions, just feel free to ask or type in the chat. We can read it. And also, like, if you guys want to unmute yourself, feel free to unmute it so we can talk to Juan directly.
Absolutely. And I'll say, just because I'm looking at the chat, hello, everybody. Thank you so much for telling me where you're from. I need to try Hot Pot. Is that in Columbus? I don't know if anyone, let me know. I want to try it. It sounds great. And great to meet you, everybody. All right. I will answer any questions that you may have. Keep an eye on the chat. Let's see. I see Lisa had. I'll answer Lisa's question. I saw that one. Oh, and Elisa, yeah, as well. So you guys may have heard of Deloitte. Deloitte is considered one of the big 4 accounting companies. So Deloitte, EY, PwC, and KPMG are all accounting companies for those accounting majors and finance. Most of those companies have also now purchased separate companies that do consulting for them. So I'm working within Deloitte Consulting, which is a different company than Deloitte. They both fall under the umbrella of Deloitte, but they're 2 different companies. So that's why I was doing consulting within Deloitte. So I didn't study accounting, but I'm still doing consulting. And then Lisa asked, if I don't have any consulting experience, my major is economics, I'm just Deloitte. Yes, great question, Lisa. So especially with consulting, here's what's interesting. You do not need a consulting internship to get into consulting. I never had a consulting internship during my time at Ohio State. However, because consulting is all about problem solving, if you have a lot of different skills in different sections, so Lisa, for example, if you have economics skills and organizational skills or design skills, anything like that, coding, you can combine those to work within consulting. I will tell you all that consulting is very difficult to prepare for. There's a lot of practicing you need to do because they ask a very specific type of question. We can definitely dive into a long conversation, so I won't get into it too much. But if you want any consulting tips, what I can do for my presentation is also give some of the best websites to start looking into to learn about consulting. So Estelle, I'll add that to the presentation that you can then send out to all the listeners.
Yeah, sure.
Of course. Could you recommend any logistics program on the campus? Great question. Logistics programs. So let me think. There is a association within Fisher College of Business called TLA. I think it's the Logistics Association, where they talk a lot about logistics and supply chain, and I definitely recommend getting involved. If you are a Fisher student, there's always an organization, for each of your majors, so definitely get involved. Even if you don't go every week, as long as you get some of the emails and start to learn more, it'll definitely help you out. Also, there is the group on Fisher's campus called BOMS, which is all about operations management, very similar to logistics. So hopefully those 2 programs can help you out. And they recommend, or they accept all students. So definitely join those. Lisa, great question about practicing for consulting. There's something called casing, which is a term that describes being able to solve a problem given to you. So for example, I might ask you, Lisa, how many coffees do you think Starbucks in Columbus sells in one day? No one knows the answer. I don't know how many cups of coffee they sell, neither does the interviewer. But hearing your process of how to solve that is what casing is all about. And I can send some resources so you can look into it. Let's see. Is networking necessary? Of course. Is networking necessary for looking for a job in Goldman and Deloitte? Oh, great question. So networking for an internship. Here's what I recommend. The difficult thing is that a lot of us have probably heard about networking within LinkedIn. This is a great place to start because you can reach out to a lot of people. However, LinkedIn is difficult now because so many people are using it that it becomes more difficult for people to respond to messages. but I still recommend to reach out to the first level analysts of the company that you're looking for. So for example, if you want to work for Goldman or Deloitte or Apple or any other company, try to find the employees that just started out very recently and reach out to them first, because they're going to be the most willing and have the most time to speak with you. At the end of a conversation, if you have one with someone on LinkedIn, I recommend to always ask, do you have any coworkers that would be willing to have a conversation with me about this topic as well? And let that employee connect you with other people within the company. That way they help you get to that next level. And your goal is to meet a few of those people that way. And maybe after you've had 2 or 3 conversations, you can ask them, I feel very excited about working here. Is there any way I can get in contact with the recruiter to see if they have any interview spots? So do that. Great question. How do you overcome the embarrassment of networking? Great question, Joe. Especially since students often only take and don't have resources. Yes. So great question about the networking. Networking is very embarrassing and difficult. I know one thing I have learned, and please, Max, correct me if I'm wrong, because I studied abroad and took a lot of multicultural awareness classes, I do understand that some cultures, some of those in China and Japan, have a much more reserved space when it comes to small talk, which is like the talk at the beginning of a conversation. I don't know if that's completely correct. That's what I've learned. And so I understand that when it comes to those superficial conversations, like how's your day going and how's the weather and all that stuff, it's very embarrassing and weird. However, if you come with a list of questions that you feel confident, like those 35 I showed you or those 3 that I showed you, and you skip over the initial superficial conversation, maybe getting into those questions can help you dive into a much more deep and conversational place that feels much more comfortable rather than embarrassing. And maybe if having that conversation is too high of a level for you at this moment, consider maybe sending an email with 3 short questions and ask them to respond to your email with 3 short answers. That might be a little bit more difficult to get a response, but definitely consider that idea. There's many ways of getting in touch with people. There's a lot of good questions. Is Handshake, Glassdoor, other job website helpful? Great question, Adam. Oh, I should have mentioned this before. I have a great tip for all of you. There is this application called Pangea, and I'll send you the link right now. This is an application for students that are, especially in college, so you have to be a college student, to find quick jobs and sometimes internships as well. So that internship I told you about, the education one, I found that through this app called Pangea. And what it does is that it connects students with job offers for college students. So if you have really good technical skills, whether that's design or coding or strategy or writing, anything that it is, you can find a job on this website. So let me put that there. Hold on. I'm in my slideshow. Let me get the link to Pangea that you guys can then use. Here it is. Sorry for the, I'm just trying to get the, okay. So if you use that link that I just sent out, I put it in the chat, that gets you to a website called Pangea that can help you find jobs. And as well as Handshake, Adam, like you mentioned, is really good. Glassdoor, I haven't used too much of, but I have heard that it's useful. When it comes to all of those, I always recommend to really do your research for a company before you start applying to a ton, because I know sometimes it can get overwhelming to apply to so many jobs there. Why do you like New York City? Great question. I love the energy. I feel like every single time I'm in New York City, I feel motivated to go outside and do something new. I feel like it's so fresh and I don't get bored of it. Maybe now wasn't the best time to choose New York City after COVID, but I'm hoping that the city will return to normal. Now, everybody takes New York City differently. I have friends who hate it, but for me, I really loved it because it was really refreshing for me. So Lisa spoke with HR on a phone call. She applied and got no response. How to make networking be more helpful? Great question, Lisa. I'm sorry that happened. One thing I'll say first is if you ever find yourself in a position where they don't respond to you, HR or anything, they don't say anything back, I think that's one of the worst things a company can do. I would always follow up with an email and ask, hi, I spoke with so-and-so, and I'm just waiting for a response. Could you please let me know, or do you have any updates on my position? How to make networking be more helpful? This is a tough question because there's no direct formula for networking. It's all about just being able to build a connection with who you're speaking with, which is not always easy. And a fact that everyone should definitely take into consideration is that you will never connect with everybody that you meet with. There are some people that when I talk with them, they're like, whoa, you have too much energy. I can't have a conversation with you. And that's just a fact of life. And so I know in advance that sometimes I'm not going to have a great conversation with everybody. But if you try your best to really connect with them, be respectful, and show them that you really care about the position, they will be much more willing to help you out. So try that when you have networking. Great. Thank you, Estelle. Is part-time job essential? Great question, Adam. I would say in terms of getting internships and jobs, no. I needed a part-time job mostly financially so that I could help pay for my apartment and to live in Columbus. So I wouldn't say that it's necessary. If you are doing okay and you're involved on campus, then you don't need it. But if you want to gain more skills and have more opportunities, then I would say finding a part-time job or an internship could be useful. How to follow up with people who you've had a conversation with, and how often should we follow up? Great question. So when it comes to following up, I always recommend after you have a conversation with anybody, send them a quick thank you note 24 hours after. If it's on LinkedIn, you can send them a quick LinkedIn message, just thank you so much. You don't have to send an email, but just thank them for their time. I would say if you haven't heard back after a week or maybe 2 weeks, I would follow up and ask, whether that's in an email or LinkedIn, just say, hi, how are you? Hope everything's going well. I completely understand if time has been packed for you this week. I was just looking to see if there's any updates from the last time that we spoke. Anything short and sweet to the point would help out. Does Goldman hire spring interns? I am not positive, but I think that they do. I don't remember. I did my summer there, so I don't recall if they do spring, but I think most big companies do spring interns. So definitely look into that possibility of having a spring internship. Let's see. Is there any part-time job intern in Goldman and Deloitte in the spring? Oh yeah, just like you asked, Lisa, great question. I would say maybe look at their websites and apply online. I applied to Goldman online at their website. Same with Deloitte. So both of them I applied through their online portal. What did you do in your internship in Goldman Sachs, and what was it very intensive? Great question. I'll talk about this briefly to make sure that I'm not taking up everyone's time. But my internship at Goldman was with the division was called Consumer Investment Management. All it meant, all those big words meant, was managing the money of the different accounts that Goldman Sachs had, moving around money to make sure that everything was filled, making sure that everybody had the money that they had put in. It was a lot of problem solving. The reason why it was difficult is because you're managing very big corporations' money, and if you mess up, it could have big consequences. So you had to be very detail-oriented and really focused on exactly what you were doing. Now, as an intern, I wasn't necessarily making the decisions. I would make a decision, and then my manager had to verify it before it got moved on. So it was intense, but I had some backups to make it easy. Do you network with someone and then get the offer in Goldman? Great question. I actually didn't do any networking with Goldman. I applied on their online portal. They let you apply 3 times to 3 different jobs. So I did 3 different job applications for Goldman online, and one of them gave me the interview possibility. When I went to the interview, I prepared a lot. It was a very tough interview, but I felt very prepared, and that way I got the internship. So for that example, no, I didn't do any networking. However, networking does help. In that situation, I just hadn't done that. Great question, Lisa. How to prepare the interview for Goldman? I did a lot of reading on Yahoo Finance about the company. I also, whenever I prepare for an interview about any company, I will go on Google and I'll type in the company's name, so Goldman, Deloitte, Apple, and then I'll put recent news to read about what's happened recently within the company so I could talk about it at the interview. So for example, at Goldman, they had just been launching a new product during the time I was interviewing. And in my interview, I brought it up, and the interviewer was like, wow, that's very surprising that you know about that. You've definitely done your homework. And so that helped me out as well. So when it comes to preparing for any interview, whichever company you're doing, research, read about their recent news, read about what products they sell, and always read about their mission statement or like their values, what they believe in most. Because what I used to do is that I would incorporate those words into my interview. So for example, for Procter & Gamble, one of their values is trust and integrity. And in my interview, while I was talking, I said, the reason that I did X, Y, or Z is because within my life, I always try to make decisions based on integrity and make sure that all my friends and coworkers trust me when I do the work. So I used their words in mine. Now, I didn't make anything up. Those are things that I believe in. It just was beneficial that they aligned with each other. So you don't need to make anything up, but if they align with what you believe in, you can use those. Technical questions and preparing for them. Ooh, that's a good question. When it comes to preparing for technical questions, I would say have in mind a problem-solving methodology. Now, that's not a big fancy term. For me, my problem-solving methodology is always something called, do you know the delivery system UPS? I always use UPS in my life. U for understand, P for plan, and 3 for solve. So before I dive into any question, I try to understand, what are they really asking me? What numbers are they giving me? And why does this matter? 2 is plan. What formula do I need to solve this? How am I going to get to the answer? Is it going to take a long time? Is it quick? Is it fast? And then 3, solve. I actually go and solve it. So hopefully that helps. Any other questions? I know I'm rambling a lot and I'm saying a lot of information. I hope this is helpful, and I hope there's something that you can take away from this. Thank you, Lisa. Great. Thank you. Did I miss any questions?
So everyone, if you have any question, feel free to put your question in the chat box. And thanks, Juan. You give us really, really excellent presentation and pretty helpful some suggestion and tips. I really appreciate.
Thank you. I was hoping it was helpful.
Yeah, it's really helpful.
I answered these 2 questions from Adam. Is finding someone in the company to refer me helpful? How do I find such people? Adam, I will say, yes, it is helpful. However, it's not expected. So no company expects you to find someone within their company to refer you. It's not an expectation and it's not required. However, if you do, it will help you. Maybe it'll help you, who knows. To do that, I would say find them on LinkedIn. One powerful feature of LinkedIn is you can search up, and what I would do on the search bar is I would type in the company I'm looking for. So let's, for example, say Apple. And then I always look for a connection between myself and an employee. So I would start by saying Apple, Ohio State University. And they will show me all the employees of Apple who studied at Ohio State. So I'll connect with them and say, hi, my name is Juan. I also study at Ohio State. I'm looking to learn more about your job within Apple. Or you can say Apple, maybe the city that you're from. I could do Apple Cincinnati. Or if you're from Beijing, Apple Beijing, and see if anyone from your city also works at Apple. So that's a really great way to build a connection at first. Do we need to network with recruiter before you get the interview? No, that's a good question, but no, you do not need to network with the recruiter. Sometimes you get the chance to, which is great, but it's not required to do so. If you do speak with a recruiter, you have more chances of getting an interview spot, but it's not necessary, and it doesn't always happen with a lot of companies. Like I said, with Goldman, I didn't speak to anybody, no employees, no recruiter. I just applied online, and thankfully I was given an interview position. So don't think that you always need to do that. But if you do, and you do speak with a recruiter, it will help you out. Awesome. What I can do as well, Estelle and Max, is I can leave my email. And if you have any questions for me, you can send questions to my email and I can respond to you there as well.
Yeah, sure.
Sure.
Is job intermediate agent and job training institution helpful? Adam, great question. I am not entirely sure if those are, I'm sure they are helpful, but I've never had experience with them or know anybody with experience in them. So I can't give you the best advice, but maybe they're helpful. I'm sorry. That's a really bad answer, but that's all I can do. And then Estelle too, when I'll send you my presentation with my Gmail as well, so you can send that out to everybody.
Yeah, sure. Excellent. That should be very, very helpful for us.
I think we can only accept one question for a time. So if you guys have any questions, just feel free to type in the chat. We can have one more questions for Juan. Okay, if you guys have not got any questions, I have like one question for Juan, for all the students here. So so Juan, you know, like all this, mainly like mostly or all the students here are like international students. So I know like when I was in my freshman year or like sophomore year, I was like so panicked, nothing about networking, and also feel under pressure about everything. And also like senior, it's a little bit different, but I think like all the students who would like to find a job on senior, junior, during the same kind of feeling. So could you just finally give some advices for those international students about what they should do to like maybe solve the pressure, or there's any advices for you to like give those international students? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, great question, Max. And I'll try to keep this short to make sure everyone can get out on time and not take up too much time. So first, I will say I completely understand and relate. Like I said, my junior year, when I became kind of an international student for one semester, I felt the stress and the nervousness of being in a new country without knowing anybody, not really knowing the companies, not knowing how to apply. It was very stressful. So I know that feeling. And I know for students that are at Ohio State or other universities, sometimes the domestic students are not very helpful and they're not very willing to accept international students or become friends with them. I know that feeling, as the Italian students weren't as welcoming to American students like myself. Now, what I do want to explain is that not every domestic student is like that. There's a lot that are more than happy to meet international students and help them out. And what I recommend as the first step is, and this is a big one, but this is the challenge that I challenge you with, is trying to find an organization that you can join. The reason why is because if you join an organization, you will meet at least one person, whether that's the president of the organization or someone else, who will be a friendly face on campus and be willing to say hi to you when you're walking around, and also to invite you to new meetings and new places. You don't have to become best friends with everybody, but as long as you meet some people within these organizations, they'll help you get a better understanding. Even if you don't want to go to meetings to talk to anybody, if you get their emails, sometimes in their emails they'll be like, Deloitte is recruiting at campus, or this company is recruiting. You'll read that, and that way you can go see them and speak to those recruiters. So you can get a lot of information. So if you're a Fisher student at Ohio State, I recommend joining your major or your specializations organization, because they accept all students, and that way you can start meeting new people. There's also, I know, the International Club at Ohio State, which hopefully helps out getting students to new clubs. Besides the clubs, the other thing I will say is challenge yourself as much as possible to say hi to a new student, whoever they are. I know that's a very scary thing to do, and it's a very tough challenge to get over. But if you try to do one thing this semester, I challenge you to either message someone on Zoom or speak with them in a breakout room and just say, hi, my name is blank. I'm an international student, and I'm really trying to get to know more people and feel more welcome on campus. Anything like that will help you meet new people. And so I know that's really tough as an international student, but I will tell you, don't get discouraged. Keep meeting new people, keep stepping outside of your comfort zone. And the more you meet, the better, the more you'll see is becoming, or that your campus will feel more like a home to you. So that's the advice that I have.
Cool. So thank you so much, Juan, for all the presentation today, and then we can jump to the second session. Also, Adam, you asked like the file, so I think Juan will send a file to us, and then ICM will like post those files and send emails to all you guys. So no worries about the recording, no worries about all the files Juan just sent us. So we're gonna separate separate. So one with each of the students talking one-on-one with each other. So currently, if you guys have do not want to, have not scheduled to like attend the second session, no worries, just feel free to quit if you want. And for students, if you have the second session, just feel free to stay here or quit until the time you're assigned. Yeah. So thank you so much for all the help and support. So we're gonna jump to the second section.
Thank you, everybody. If I'm not going to be speaking to you one-on-one, it was great to maybe meet you virtually. If you have my email when I sent it in, please send me questions that you have, and best of luck with everything. I know you all will do fantastic.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, everyone can get the recording, and we will send all the information, including the file and the recording, to the OSU students. So just contact us. And thanks for Juan again. I really appreciate. And so for the next section, Jinshu will set the breakout room for each student. So is the first student already?
Yeah, the first student's ready. Okay, I will start the breakout room right now.
Okay, cool. Let's go over to the next section. OK， 谢谢各位今天的参与和积极的提问，然后非常感谢 Max。那大家可以在这个大厅里等待，然后如果说你是第8位、第9位，就是比较靠后的话，你可以就是挂在这儿，或者说先退出。我们每一个就是在提前10分钟会提醒每一个同学，然后你记得 check 一下你的 WeChat 或者说你的 email， 我们会提前10分钟通知每一个同学。